Hello everyone, welcome back to the DVD series. My name is Adam, and in today's episode we're going to be talking about the picture that is on a DVD disc. We're also going to be talking about how you'd plug up a DVD player to any device and how you can utilize a DVD player in a modern 4K signal chain to get the very best out of DVD, as well as the settings needed. But what exactly is on these discs in terms of picture? Well, DVD has two different picture types, two formats, an NTSC format and a PAL format. Now these don't talk anything about the multi-region. This is the format for which the disc is made for the relevant compatible player. When DVD first launched, it was only NTSC or PAL formatted discs. It was a couple of years later that manufacturers were making DVD players that would play both formats. Now both NTSC and PAL have their own separate special list of specifications, which we're going to get into, but they all share three features of the DVD video, which is the subtitle system, the bitrate system, and the codec compression. The codec compression used on DVD is MPEG-2, which is designed by Sony and evolved from the MPEG-1 system, which was used on VCD. Now, MPEG-2 is a really good compressor. In fact, it's that good it was used on the Blu-ray format as well. And it basically allows an author to take a 12 terabyte master file and shrink it down or compress it down by only copying over what is needed or the difference between the frames to a 6 gigabyte file. I'm going to get into a lot more detail in the process of that, but it utilizes the second feature, which is the bitrate system. Now the bitrate system is really complicated, and again I'll get into it in a deeper way in another video, but basically what it does is it uses a single bit to change the picture frame to frame for color and luminance. So your screen resolution on the DVD system is divided up into tiny little pixels, and one bit will change one pixel color and luminance value over the course of a second, which, you know, depending on which format you're using, will be multiple different frames, and one bit changes one pixel. So a bit rate is utilized for the film to record the differences between the frames. So as you play your movie and as the scene plays on, you know, color and light will move through these pixels, and it needs to be recorded and changed or just discarded and kept the same. And the bitrate system is how this is achieved. So either the information in a single pixel will remain the same, or it will change, and a single bit will make that change. So a bit rate is what is used. Now the DVD video system has a maximum of 11,000 bits per second. So 11,000 bits can be on the screen at any one time according to the DVD specifications, although only 9,000 of those 11,000 bits, or 11 megabits, are utilized for encoding video. But what about the other 2,000 bits? Where do they go? Well, 1,000 bits is reserved for the subtitle system, which we'll get into a second, and another 1,000 bits is given as overhead for error protection. So the manufacturers are told that 9,000 or 9 megabits is the very top end of the encoding scale, and in all honesty, standard DVDs don't even ever reach 9 megabits. The only DVDs to ever reach 9 megabits were the super bit range, but they give 1,000 bits headroom, so if when the encoding accidentally spikes up above 9,000, it still can play the disc. If it didn't have this headroom, what would happen is if the encode spiked above 9,000, the disc would simply freeze because the player doesn't have the necessary bits to play what is encoded on the disc. It's a really complex system, and like I said, in the how you make a DVD, I'm going to get into a lot more detail about how that happens. And the third feature is the subtitle system, which I think is pretty cool and not used as much as it could be. So on the actual disc, is a SRT file, which is a text document only a few kilobytes in size, but contains all the words for the subtitles with timestamps required. The actual display or render of the subtitles is done on the DVD player itself. The subtitle system can have up to 32 tracks of subtitles, generally reserved for translation of language, although in some cases they will utilize the subtitles as a commentary in the text form, which I think is a really good idea because it saves the space on the disc that the audio commentary would take up by having it as the subtitle system, yet the same information to the user is getting across. So the player has, or the subtitle system has 4 colors, and the font is decided by the manufacturer on the player, and it is basically an overlay, and it uses 1,000 bits out of the total 11,000 bits bit rate. So if you could see the subtitle system in full effect, you would see a total black screen, except at the bottom where there would be a window that you could see through with an inverted color and the words in a transparent negative color form. Obviously you don't see the black because it is transparent, you see through it. And when you turn your subtitles off, you're turning the transparency of the box on, and you don't see that what the words are within that box. When you activate the subtitles and turn them on, you're turning the transparency off to visually show now what is inside that box, which is just the words. So the quality of the subtitles is really going to be down to the player itself utilizing only 1,000 bits to display or render the subtitles. In effect, the subtitle system is always running even if you turn it off, which I think is a pretty cool way to have subtitles on a disc that you can just turn on and off at will. And these 3 features are both a part of the PAL and the NTSC format system. But what about those 2 formats? What exactly do they contain? Well, an NTSC formatted disc will have a resolution of 720 by 480. Now that can be either progressive or interlaced, but most every NTSC film uses the interlaced system because that's what the broadcast system in America was back when we had analog CRT TVs. I'll go into the difference between interlaced and progressive in a moment. The frame rate on an NTSC formatted disc is 29.997 frames per second. Now, the NTSC format system also allows backwards compatibility for VCD, which is 352 by 288 at the same frame rate, meaning that VCD and DVD information could be kept and stored on the same disc. But unfortunately, VCD is a progressive system, so on a interlaced formatted disc, it's not going to really work having progressive program material on that disc as well, which is such a shame because having VCD quality bonus features would save space for the main feature, which would be able to be in a higher quality. Unfortunately, no manufacturer ever took advantage of that, but it is a feature of the DVD specifications. That's the NTSC format. What about the PAL format? Well, a PAL formatted disc has a resolution of 720 by 576. Again, can be either interlaced or progressive, although most every PAL disc uses the progressive system to be in line with the broadcast system that was used back in the analog TV days. It also has a frame rate of 25 frames per second, and again is backwards compatible with VCD, meaning that on a PAL disc, it is totally possible to utilize the VCD format as well as the DVD format for the bonus features and have the main feature in a DVD quality. I'm quite glad that no manufacturer did do that, because the bonus features would be obviously in a lower quality and be very blocky when displayed on the screen. But it is such a shame because it would save a lot of space on the disc, enabling higher quality main feature. Although on many PAL discs, the bonus features generally are on a second disc anyway, so makes no difference. Now, I talked about progressive and interlace. What is the difference? Well, it's a big difference, to be honest. On a progressive system, you get the full frame, the entire picture full frame, from frame to frame. Obviously, there are 25 frames, but coming from a 35mm negative, there are 24 frames per second. The PAL format simply just adds an additional frame every second, and the audio has to be redone to be synced back to the PAL formatted video. The resolution 720 by 576 generally means that PAL discs are in much higher quality than the NTSC format discs, which use the interlace system, which only gives you half a frame of information for every frame. So the way it works is, if this was the frame on the disc for the NTSC system, all the even numbered frames would only record the top field of the frame, whereas all the odd numbered frames would only record the bottom field of the frame. So when played back at basically 30 FPS, which is about 6 frames more than what is from the original, so a Telesyn 2x2 pull down has to occur to basically go from 24 frames per second to 29.997, which is basically 30 frames per second, by pulling down the top to bottom field. So when played back at a higher frame rate, it appears that you're seeing a full frame, but in actual fact it's made up of only half a frame for every single frame. And the reason that the resolution is 720 by 480 is to allow for that pull down effect to take place, matching on the output 720 by 576, meaning there are less lines of resolution on an NTSC formatted disc when you compare it to a PAL disc. At the end of the day, it's a very small, only like less than 100 lines difference between the two formats. Very negligible, not really noticed, but I think on a 4K screen you can really tell the difference between the two formatted discs if you had the same film playing side by side. Now, that is basically the picture that you'll find on the DVD disc. It's, if you actually looked at the structure of the disc, opened it up on a PC, you'll open it up and you'll find two folders within the disc, one that says Video TS and one that says Audio TS. And it's the Video TS which will contain all the files for what is on the DVD, for the film or the bonus features, and they will be wrapped in a VOB file, which is a video object container file, which will contain the MPEG-2 video with the synced audio and the subtitles, and that's basically what is on the disc. But how do you hook up a DVD player to any device? Well, it really depends on your device. It depends on what connections you've got on the back. If you look at the back of your device, you're going to have one of 5 different connections for DVD. Believe it or not, DVD format has the most compatible connections out of any format. Laserdisc, VHS, they only contain 2 connections to plug up to a device for display. Blu-ray only and 4K HD. Blu-ray and 4K only have 1 cable connection that you can use, whereas DVD uses 5. DVD came out at that time when analog was dying off and digital was taken off, so it was compatible with both. Depending on when you bought your player, you will have one of the 5 following or more connections that we're about to talk about. The early players only carried the analog ones, whereas the later made players actually also had the digital outputs on them. So really what you first need to do is look at your DVD player, see what connections you've got. You're either going to have one of the 5 following. You're either going to have a composite cable, which is a single yellow colored cable coming out the back of the DVD player. This basically had all the picture information wrapped into one coiled wire. It is an analog wire and only is compatible with up to 480 progressive or interlaced lines of resolution. The second one you'll find is S-Video, which is basically the same thing as composite, although it separates the color and the luminance channels into separate feeds. Now, generally, it is a cleaner signal because most manufacturers place a comb filter on the color feed for a cleaner output. So it is a processed effect or filtered output over composite, which is basically the raw signal coming out. The third connection you might find is the SCART connection on the back of a player, which is a red, green, blue or RGB output. Generally tends to be used for digital editing or digital color. There is a massive difference with the RGB output because it is in the RGB format, which isn't what the DVD would have been mastered in. DVDs tend to be the YBC chroma color output, whereas RGB is a completely different color space. So if you use a SCART lead, you're actually changing the color space on the disc to RGB from YBC. It generally is basically the same kind of quality though as an S-Video, but it does also contain sound where S-Video doesn't. The fourth type of connection that you might find on a DVD player is a component cable, which is a 3 or 4 cable hookup separating all the colors separately, and generally tends to be the highest quality type of cable connection. It supports up to 1080 interlaced in terms of resolution, whereas SCART and S-Video only go up to 480. You only generally tend to find a component hookup on the later models that are higher in price, the really high-end models, and there's not many TVs that actually do support component hookup. And the fifth final connection is HDMI. The later players that were made do actually have a HDMI output, which is the modern current cable connection, supporting up to originally 1080p for the first version, 2K for the second version, and now 4 and 8K for, I think we're on version number 3. You might find one of these 5 different connections on the back of your DVD player. So depending on what you've got on your player and depending on what you've got on your display, be it a projector, a rear projector TV, or a CRT TV, or a LED TV, LCD, 4K, whatever, look on the back of your display device and see what connections are available. If you've got a modern TV, you're only going to have HDMI generally, and we'll go into that later. If you're using an older player, which DVD basically was designed for CRT TVs, then you probably will have either SCART or composite on the back of that TV. If you've got a rear projection high-end TV, you might have component. If you've got an early LCD TV, you will have HDMI, but you also might have SCART as well, and you might also have composite. But whichever cable you're going to choose, remember that S-Video SCART will alter the native color, what is on the disc, and sort of filter it or even change it to a different color space or filter what is there. So if you want to get the raw data that is on a DVD player, I highly recommend going with the composite cable. It is the lowest quality, but at the end of the day, it matches perfectly the resolution for what DVD is designed for, which maximum is generally 480 interlaced, but even 576 will show on a composite cable. I use composite on my DVD player, and I have it going into my THX amplifier into the composite, and then back out composite into another device, which I'll get to in a second. So basically, looking on the back of your display, you choose your hookup, you get your cables, you hook them up, done. If you're not using SCART, then you need to also think about the audio, because out of all, like, component, S-video, and composite only carry the video signal. SCART and HDMI will also carry the audio. So if you're using those two connections, great. But if you're using the others, you do also need to hook up your audio, which we'll get to in the next video. So if you're wanting to connect your DVD player to a modern 4K TV, you're most likely only going to have HDMI. And if your DVD player doesn't have HDMI on the back, what do you do? Well, I would recommend using composite on your DVD player. And if your amplifier has HDMI out and composite in, you can hook it straight into your amplifier and then HDMI it out to your 4K TV, and it generally will upscale to your monitor. And your TV might also have to upscale if it features upscaling ability. If you don't have that on your amplifier, or if your TV doesn't allow for a composite cable to go in, I know modern OLEDs don't, then you're going to need another device. Now, you can get very cheap ones from China off Amazon, which I don't recommend. They sometimes lock the resolution, so even your TV won't be able to scale properly using those small little black boxes. I personally use a Kramer scaler. It's a professional high-end from like 2004 presentation scaler. It has 4 separate input and outputs, and it allows for a composite input and component input. So whichever one you choose, it's compatible with. But it has a HDMI output. So I put from my THX amplifier composite cable into my Kramer scaler. I then say to the Kramer scaler that the signal coming in, it's going to get upscaled to 1080p. And it processes it to deinterlace a interlaced signal. Doesn't do any proper video processing on it. I tend to leave that to my TV. And then HDMI's out the signal to my 4K TV, which has an inbuilt scaler into it as well. So it takes the 1080p signal and upscales it to 4K. Now, there is a version of the Kramer scaler that will go up to 2K. Now, I've done some tests, and I actually find that my TV has a better upscaler than the Kramer scaler. So if I got that 2K version Kramer scaler, that means the Kramer scaler is taking care of half the upscaling, and the TV is taking care of the other half. Whereas the one I do have only sends it to 1080p, which is like 25% of the way. And then the TV does the rest of the 75% up to 4K. And I kind of feel that that would yield better final results than if the Kramer scaler went further and did more processing on the video to upscale it to 2K. I probably might even get the 2K one to do proper testing, but I'm actually really happy with the results of the Kramer scaler. It takes a DVD video for 480 or 576, upscales it to 4K, and it looks like Blu-ray quality on my 4K OLED display. Like, I'm totally happy watching a DVD just as much as a 4K disc. There's a lot more reasons why I'd actually prefer watching a DVD. These were mastered at the time, like American Beauty. This DVD was mastered at the time the film was made. The prints are fresh, and if this recently came out on 4K as of recording this video 2025, this film was made in the year 2000, I believe. So that's 25 years ago, meaning the prints have been dusting and decomposing for 25 years. So there's a level of denoising that has to take place, or restoration, to change the picture to make it look fresh and brand new. And the processing techniques involved sometimes use AI, or just sometimes go too far and it doesn't look good. I'd much prefer to use this version over a 4K version because the quality of the print that was scanned is cleaner and better over a newer 4K, which has a higher resolution, but I can watch this in a Blu-ray quality and still be happy. So that is basically everything about picture that you'll find on the DVD disc, how to hook it up to any display, and how to incorporate it into a modern 4K signal chain. Now, if you are doing the 4K signal chain, there's a few settings that you need to be aware of. If your DVD player can do both PAL and NTSC, there is a setting that converts your frame rate effectively to match your TV's refresh rate. If you're living in America, your TV refresh rate is generally going to be 60 megahertz. That's the frequency signal carrier for the old analog broadcasts. In the PAL territories, it's 50 hertz. So there is a big difference there. And your DVD player needs to be aware. Now, most DVD players will have an auto function, but if you're exclusively using your DVD player as a NTSC or a PAL player, I highly recommend taking it off the auto and specifically stating video or film. Film is used for the PAL encoded discs, and video is used for the NTSC encoded discs. And I would, on your DVD player, select the one you're going to be using your player for. If you're going to be using it for both, leave it to auto, although sometimes you have to pop your disc in, let it play, take it out and put it back in for it to properly pick up which one it's going through. On your TV, on the other hand, it also will have the same function. Auto, or it'll say film, or it'll say video, might even say NTSC or PAL. In which case you need to select the relevant one, otherwise you're not going to be properly playing the disc at the native frequency that it's designed to do. So whenever basically I play an NTSC format disc, it plays at 60 hertz. Whenever I play a PAL disc, it plays at 50 hertz. And if, no matter where you're living in the world, your TV needs to be able to do both. Modern TVs do, but old CRT TVs don't. They generally are locked to the region that they were sold in. So if you have a CRT NTSC telly, it's generally only going to be able to do 60 hertz, which you'd think would be compatible with 50 hertz, but I don't know, man. I don't think sometimes it will be. Definitely a PAL 50 hertz CRT TV will not display properly a 60 hertz DVD from an NTSC format. So knowing those settings on both your DVD player and your output device is essential. Like I said, most of the time just select auto, but just note that sometimes the first time it may not pick up properly the signal coming in. You might have to eject the disc and put it back in for it to then properly latch on and output that appropriate frequency. The other settings, especially for DVDs, is noise reduction. I would recommend doing no noise reduction on the DVD player or an amplifier or a Kramer device, because all those for me are from like 2001 to 2004, and the denoising features on those devices are not as good as a modern 4K OLED TV. I definitely recommend when you're upscaling digital content, you do need to have some denoising slightly on the disc. Otherwise, it could look blocky, or you could see artifacts that you don't really want to see. I use a mosquito noise, process. I also use block noise denoising feature, as well as MPEG. MPEG being the crucial one, as that gets rid of the rainbow effect. Those three should be available on a OLED 4K current set, and I do recommend utilizing small amounts, very small amounts, just to reduce the digital artifacts, and that really helps boost the picture color. Obviously, you also want to have your color, your saturation, your contrast, all those settings. You want to have those spot on to get the very best of the DVD format, because DVD picture has 8-bit color encoded on it, which actually is the same as Blu-ray, believe it or not. But 4K has 12-bit color and is compatible with 10-bit color as well. And so colors have a wider dynamic range, allowing for deeper colors, deeper blacks, whiter whites, and a wider spectrum of colors. So comparing that to a DVD, DVDs will look different because they only have 8-bit color, which is a more limited range and not as detailed or deep color as more modern formats. But balancing your color setting for this can actually compensate for 8-bit, and some DVD players, if you or a 4K Blu-ray player that also will play DVD, will change the 8-bit into 10-bit, which is why I think the DVDs look like Blu-rays, because the Blu-ray tends to be changed to 10-bit when I play a Blu-ray on my player. But some players will also upscale the color to 10-bit as well. But definitely having your color slider set correctly is going to be the biggest difference for a washed out picture versus a picture that looks like a Blu-ray. I can get the DVD looking exactly like a Blu-ray on my setup. There is nothing wrong with the DVD format. Its resolution is perfectly adequate to capture enough of the 35mm frame. Remember, it's not the DVD that captures the 35mm, it's the scanning and transfer to DVD that captures the detail. And generally they were always done in 2K back in the day. Now, a 35mm negative can hold up to 3K of information. So a 2K scan will pick up everything in that frame that is needed, but it won't pick up everything that a 4K scan will pick up, in like very minute film grain or dust or those little things that then need to be washed out, denoised during a mastering process. So effectively a 2K scan, like the Westworld series was scanned in 2K, put on a 4K disc, and it looks amazing. So the films here that were scanned in 2K put to a DVD look absolutely fine when upscaled to 4K. I've got no problems watching a DVD versus a 4K. Obviously, 4K has a wider color range than a DVD, but you can compensate for that by having the right color settings. I think that's basically about it for the settings. I can't think of any other setting. Basically, you want to make sure you turn off all the auto features as well. Auto contrast, auto brightness. You want to turn all that off. Basically, because you don't want the TV deciding the color and the contrast and the brightness per scene, per film, because that might not choose the right setting. So all your auto stuff needs to go off. Slight denoising on the 4K OLED TV, and make sure your color is spot on. Red, because using composite cable, tends to be the one color that, or the one channel that will have the most errors in it. It's so easy to get the red wrong on DVD, to have it blown out and too much. If you play a film that has a bit of red in it, like American Beauty with the red rose, when you're setting your color, freeze the picture if you can, and set the color of red to where they're not blooming. That will set the appropriate color scale slider setting for basically every other film. Because if you get the red channel correct on DVD, every other color falls in line absolutely correctly. And on a lot of 4K TVs, you can alter the separate color channels. So you can tone down the red or increase the green, the blue, the magenta, the cyan, whatever. My OLED TV even has a white balance graphic equalizer that I can fine tune the whites to increase them as well. I might do a separate video on that just to let you know. But yeah, get the red color right on DVD and everything else falls in line. Anyway, thank you so much for watching the picture of DVD video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. In the next video, we're going to talk about the audio on DVD. What exactly is on these discs in terms of audio, how you hook it up to your player, and all that lovely stuff. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.